Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good day as well, and very welcome to this webcast here, to our webcast on the Influential Finance Leader. My name is Lars Suttmann. I'm just moving that away. I'm the director of the Business Unit CFO Council here for the EMEA region. Maybe a couple of words on myself, because I will be leading this webcast here today, and I will guide you through a couple of key strategies on influential finance leadership. My background is I've spent majority of my career with Procter & Gamble in various finance roles as a country CFO for Belgium and various strategy and global roles as well. And after moving away from Procter & Gamble, I've been involved as well in university lecturing on high-performance finance organization. And of course, working with the council here at the conference board as well. And what I want to do today is to share with you from these various experiences, from practical experiences, but also from our research experience, basically, on what are some of the strategies, some of the very practical strategies on how to achieve influence and influential financial leadership. A couple of sentences, a couple of words on how to interact in this webcast here today in the next minutes that we will be together. You can always ask questions via the chatbot. I will receive them here, so that's why sometimes you'll see me looking down to some of these instruments here. That's when I'm interacting with your questions as well. Feel free to download the presentation. You can do in full screen or you can do in split screen, however you want to do. And very important, at the end, I will be asking you as well to look at the evaluation, and if you can spend some 1 or 2 minutes on this one, that would be absolutely fantastic as well. And of course, this will be recorded, so afterwards you can share this with your colleagues or rewatch it and then continue the discussion also afterwards as well. So let's dive directly into it. Influential financial leadership. For this one, we need to look at a bit of the development of the finance function. And depending on where you are, we have participants here today from all over the globe here, from all continents, almost all continents present. Wherever you are, it depends a bit on your organization, but there are various steps in it. I've put forward here one model for you when it comes to finance and the development of the finance function from, let's say, pure focus on data, the data provider at the bottom there, which is here in this model by PwC called Scorekeeper model, which is like the classic area of finance, down to up in more corporate responsibilities, more partnership with the organization, down up to business partnership. So that can come from the pure report provider, so to speak, the pure data provider, down to really the person who is on par with senior leadership, with the CEO and with the rest of the management team, but not only as the provider of data, but also really working there, developing, driving the business unit forward. And always depending on where you are on that steps, we see a current trend in a lot of organizations to move the finance function towards that business partnership, to really be on par there to help work together with the business. Now, I would say for this one, we do need influence skills, because of course we have responsibilities for our organizations, for the finance organizations, but when it comes to our business partners, the CEO, the general managers, but also our peers from other functions, of course, we need to collaborate with them. We need to work with them. We need to, if we want to be true business partners, help driving the business, we need to work with them. And sometimes we have formal authority, but very often we need to work with them and need to establish and build up influence skills. And that's why I do think we need to dive in and need to see, like, what does it take to become an influential leader and to build in the influence. Now, what is influence? If we look at the definition of influence, the power or capacity of causing an effect in indirect or intangible ways. So it is a way of getting things done, but not via direct formal authority, you will do this by now, but like really more by in various indirect ways. And that influence, that bringing and moving finance toward an influential functions, that's what I want to develop here together with you today, and to share with you some very practical strategies, some about 10 practical strategies that I've uncovered both from research, but all of them I've worked in my teams, my organizations, and also with the clients I'm working with at the moment as well. Again, at any time, if you have any questions or thoughts, just type them into the box, and then I will weave that in. So let's look at this influence. But before we look at the influence and the strategies, let's look at what I would call the enemies of influence. And these ones, depending on where you are, what you're based on, what your role is, but you might have seen it in your team, you might know somebody who has already done these as well, or you might have heard it from business partners as well, what finance sometimes stands for, especially also finance leaders. And what is there the enemies of influence, I would say, for finance? That would be something like this, boom. Not the data itself, but taking the data like this and presenting it like this to our colleagues and say, here's the stuff, go work. And then very often you receive, and you might have seen this and experienced this as well, when somebody from your team did something like this and just throw up the Excel chart, you might have seen that look on the other side's face like, oh no, another of these charts, of these data things and so on. There's finance again. And that is the enemy of influence. That way also of communicating would be one of the enemies of influence. That can go further, also in chart format. I've looked a bit in my box, in my horror cabinet of PowerPoint files, something like this. If you start communicating things like this, very often the influence level we see very rapidly drop, and we see reactions a little bit like this, maybe on the other side, even if it is from very, very on unimportant topics as well. But sometimes this reaction can come, and we need to, in our communication, in our way, in our interaction, need to work on this one and collaborate with the others and exert other ways of influence. Now, I have a question for you, and that question is as follows. If we look at influence, I've put forward the definition out there, which is like the intangible ways. But typically, when we look at research on what does finance do, what are the different activities and skills needed for finance, we typically come across three areas. People go, okay, there's the technical skills, the knowledge of GAAP, of accounting practices, and so on. There's methodology skills, like a strategy process, planning process, and so on. And there is, of course, what is sometimes called the soft skills, basically, which is the demeanor, the way we interact, and so on. If we just limit it to these three, when it comes to influence, I want to open up a little poll, and you can see that poll over there in your screen as well. Which one would you say is the most important one? The most important one for influence? Which one? Would it be the technical knowledge for finance? Would it be the methodologies that we use, the strategy process and so on, or planning process? Or would it be the non-verbal, the soft skills like non-verbal environment, the way we communicate and so on? Take maybe a second to look at what you would say is the most important one. All right, and the answers are coming in already, and I see at the moment as well, we can open this up as well, like for ones like by far, well, several of you go for methodology, nobody for the technical side, and the vast majority goes for behavior. Actually, more than 90% of you go for manner and style. And I would tend to agree, but I would open it up as well, because I would say, and also based on the models that we put together, I would say it's even a combination of all of this used in the right way. And that's what I want to develop you in the rest of the time that you have together, develop with you together and build a little bit of an influence model. And I would say, when we look at influence and finance and influence, I would typically look at 5 different areas, and especially at the interplay of these 5 different areas. I think influential financial leadership, an influential financial leader, has a focus on 5 different fields. It's a communication focus that is really also very much corresponding to, I think, the answer that we've received is that nonverbal area, but it's also system drive, business focus, innovation focus, and behavior focus. And I will develop this together with you, and I will share with you a couple of thoughts and a couple of strategies for all of them. how I approach this year and how I would suggest to approach this really, I want to help you fill your toolbox as an influential finance leader. I want to build up your toolboxes, and I want to approach it in a way that we say it's tools, not rules. There's not the one model that is out there, not the one thing, okay, that's how you have to do it. Everybody has a different style, a different way, but I do think there's a couple of patterns and there's some tools that you can use. And so what I would love to do is, while going through these 5 areas, is fill your toolbox. And maybe some tool will resonate more than others with you. And again, afterwards as well, I would love to continue the conversation and also getting your thoughts as well on the various tools. So with that, let's go right in. And I would love to start with the first one where you also said, like, okay, this is one of the key areas, these behavioral ones. And one of the key things is communication. So I would love to start with and provide you 3 quick tools when it comes to communications that I think finance individuals can use, finance leaders on all levels can use to really gain influence as well. Peter Mondani here from General Electric said, we need to see that finance people can take complex data and cleanly synthesize it, very few words. Operating people not going to have time to do all this. And that's why we have this, that's why I present as well that enemy of influence is that famous fill data chart, which some of us might love, but with the people we want to exert influence on, sometimes don't have the time and not the interest to dive through this. And that's why I want to share with you 3 strategies as well that combat this a bit, but that have worked very well for me in the past, and also various companies are being employed. The first strategy and the first tool that I want to share with you is inspired by a book called Made to Stick that I can highly recommend you as well if you want to broaden a bit your communication impact as well. This is by the brothers Heath, Chip Heath and Dan Heath, and they have looked at what does it make that actually true communication, whenever we have an idea and a message that we want to pass on, how can we make it stick? That people remember this one also afterwards, and that they go out and think like, I need to do something about this. Very powerful book. One of the strategies they share in there, I have employed as well with a lot of my teams. And that is what is called, that tool, the commander's intent. They share the research and the strategy there back from, inspired by various fields, one of them being the military actually, where also there in the early 2000s, a lot of communication got very complex and was full of PowerPoint slides as well. And that's why several branches have installed something which is called the commander's intent. At the top of every message, on top of every complex guidance that is being given, it requires somebody to fill in what is the commander's intent, what is the core thing. And I've employed this a lot for myself, but also with my finance leaders as well in there, to push ourselves to come up with very clear and concise message to every data, to every analysis, every report we might have had. The commander's intent that they, for example, share in there is, if we do nothing else during tomorrow's mission, we must, and then fill in the blanks. Single most important thing that we must do tomorrow is this. Now that was from the commander's intent. In the finance world, in the business world, I would say, hey, if we did this analysis, we think something should be done, forcing ourselves to summarizing that in one single thing. Single most important thing that we must do is, and then fill in the blank. This really has an intent because it combats a bit that, what I would sometimes call the curse of knowledge and the curse of too much data in the influence. So maybe work this whenever you have your communication, your analysis, your data that you want to bring on, to summarize it into that one sentence. Moving forward. Okay, moving forward, one back. The next tool that I would have for you and that I would recommend every senior finance leader to have is what I would call power charts. Power charts to get true influence and to get a bit of that language with that peer group and with the general management, with the CEO as well, is to have power charts. So not that huge deck of 25 things, but to have 1 or 2 or 3 charts that take one idea and make it so crystal clear so that the people take and actually carry that with them and show it to others as well. And I think finance is uniquely established to provide these kind of data as well. Here I've just brought one example, more as a general example here as well, that I've just recently come across that immediately stick and that I would carry around. This is basically one example more on world development fields. it shows in clear development, boom, that there was a threshold time in 2012, basically, where more people had access to mobile phones than to clean water and electricity, which is in itself, it's a powerful fact as well. And from there you can take and make your conclusions. But this one would stick as well. These messages stick. And I think as finance, we need to be able to condense things so much that actually we can take it away so that people go, oh, can you give me that chart? Because I need to go on and need to move people and need to take this to make my message. And if we achieve in doing this, and again, as finance, I think we're uniquely equipped for this, then we actually start influencing. Because we're not telling people, okay, Dirk, take this and this action. But people, by the most compellingness of that data, go on and actually go and take action by themselves. So what I would recommend for you, for your teams, is really to distill these 1 or 2 or 3 power charts, things that for your business area, for your area of influence, that distill this so clear that it's no doubt, okay, what needs to be done as well. And that is then the power of data, and that is the power of influence via communication to be had. The next one, the next tool that I have in communication for you is data storytelling. Now, over the past years, a lot is being told on storytelling, and sometimes it's just used like, okay, no, let's tell a story. But actually, I think we in finance can use that a lot as well. Because again, very often, things come up that people say like, oh, boom, that's it, here's the analysis, take your conclusion, or let's have that discussion on this, go through the details in there. But I think one of the key things to get people moving as well is tell a data story. Now, how do we tell a data story? We're very lucky there that Pixar, which some of you might know, might have seen with a family or for yourself, have seen some movies, has shared actually what is called the Pixar Model, or the way all stories look like. And I want to share that with you because I do think also in finance we can use a lot of this one as well. So what does the Pixar Model look like? 6 simple steps that are actually across the globe. And I think all of you on the line are actually working also in international or even multinational organizations. All the people on the line can actually use as well, because storytelling is a universal language. So what does the Pixar model look like? It goes like this. Once upon a time, every day, one day, because of that, until finally. 6 steps where Pixar says almost all of our movies follow this one. Once upon a time, there was a fish called Nemo. Every day was swimming around. One day he got away. Because of that, the father of the fish needed to find him. He met the sharks. He fought with the sharks until finally they got reunited. Now, of course, as finance, and in a business context, I would adapt the language a bit. But the steps are the very same. And very often I see senior finance leaders communicate just like, boom, that's what here's the data, that's it. But instead, take the data approach and share that and build that story. So going there once upon a time, skipping that language, but moving the same thing. So here was 2012. Boom, everything was flat in terms of profit margin. Everything was here and we were doing healthy slowing margins. Then one day something happened. What was that happened? Well, that factor hit in. Because of that, the profit margin went down. We took a couple of corrective actions. It went up a bit. We took some more corrective actions. It went up a bit. But then finally we're here and we need to follow something forward. That is data storytelling. Taking the people, connecting this through time and sharing that story so that people can take it away and actually go out and share that, continue to share that also in their non-finance organizations as well. And with that, we gain very often very key influence. So these were 3 tools that I had for communication focus, basically. So it was the commander's intent, power charts, and data storytelling to employ. If we go now one step further, the next one is the system focus. And for this, I need to take you into the world of system and organizational science as well. And I want to share with you one study that was done where I do believe we can learn as well a lot from. And that, for this one, we need to go to the year 2003 to one of the landmark studies in social sciences, actually as well, that looked at a very unique field, and you will see in a second why that is relevant for us. It was a study done, again, a hallmark study done in Europe, and it was on organ donorship. A bit of a different topic here, organ donorship. So again, the livers and so on that are being donated. It's a very big topic in public health, of course. And what that study did is look at the various fields of what does it look like in what is called effective consent of organ donorship in the various countries. So here we go. I'm just building up that study. Here we go. Effective consent on the one axis here, and you see various European countries mapped out from Denmark, Netherlands, United Kingdom, varying there between 4 and 17% of effective organ donorship then, basically. Then comes the really interesting thing, which is the other side, basically. Moving one step further, things like Austria, Belgium, where I'm located at the moment, where we're doing this webcast here, France, Hungary, all having significantly higher rates, almost 100% rates of it, as well as Sweden. And you can read this further. I put always the sources in there as well. So the big thing is what they ask themselves, like, what is the difference? What is the difference between the two? Germany, Austria, culturally, I mean, maybe some of you are on the line. I'm German as well. Not so much difference. Belgium, the Netherlands, not so much difference. But what is the one difference? You might already guessing it. Several countries there, on the one hand, have what is called an opt-in policy, like Germany or the Netherlands, where you have to actively, at that time there in 2003, had to actively sign in and say, yes, I want to be an organ donor. Whereas the other countries have an opt-out policy where it's presumed as well that one is an organ donor, and that alone leads to massive differences. Just need to go back here to my slide. All right. So this is opt-in versus opt-out. The system itself within is designed differently, leading to massively different designs. And now comes the connection to finance. I do believe we can we can play a massive role with the reports, with the other things, with the processes that we design, by designing it in a way, basically, that leads towards a certain desired outcome, where we don't have to convince everybody, fill that out, but just very clear, for example, an opt-in, opt-out. And we see that all over the place, basically, examples for this. One example that I want to give you, that I experience on a regular basis, just let me move on the slide here. 1, 2, 3. There's, at the moment, one connection that I need to do it. It seems to be reconnecting. Bear with me a second. Okay, just 1 second. All right. Tick, tick. Okay, I need to go back to slide 28. Okay, there we go. Apologies for this. So there you see, for example, a normal ATM cash machine. And now think about for yourself in your country where you are, how, when you go to an ATM cash machine, which I assume you do from time to time, how does it work? And across the countries, there are 2 different basic processes. Process 1, you put in your card, you type in your code, you say how much money you want to have, whatever it is, whatever currency you want to have it in, and then comes the 2 different ones. In some countries, you then get the money, and then you need to put in, okay, give me back the card. In some other countries, you get first the card, and then the money. Now for yourself, think, where do more cards get forgotten, so to speak, in the machine? Where do more cards get forgotten in the machine? And I've personally experienced this myself, because I've been with one bank, basically, where it was first, I mean, almost for all my life, it was first the card, then the money, and I never forget the money, basically, in the card. But now I'm actually, 10 years ago, I moved to a different bank, basically, and there, it was first the money and then the card. And guess, you might have guessed it, and you might think for yourself as well, like, what happens then? Very often cards get lost. And that's when then very sophisticated things get in place, like basically some big sounds come in, yeah, your card is back in. But it's also a switch, and there might be various reasons for this. But what it is, it drives very different behaviors. The question is, if we move then to the next slide, slide 29 as well, how are you designing your reporting process to make it, so to speak, error-proof? And that's how we can exert significant influence, I think, in finance, as well with designing this, whatever it is, budget inputs, whatever it is that we get, making it error-proof, similar to, for example, like a GSM network here. That little edge that you see there at the end actually prevents and makes it that this thing has only, at least you use very brute force, only one way to put it into a mobile phone, or into an iPad. If that wasn't there and it was like four square like this, people would go, okay, how do I put this? How do I put this? And so on. The question is, how are you designing your reporting, your organization as well to make it error-proof? And I think here, especially with that opt-in, opt-out thinking, basically, we can exert a lot of influence that finance with a total system overview sits at a very, very powerful role and can drive that forward. The next tool that I would have for you is what I would call IFTTT. And some of you might even be using that app. I'm not talking about the app, but I'm talking about similar things, especially when it comes to decisions and decision frameworks. And IFTTT stands for if this, then that. If this, then that decision trees. And I was working in an organization, and one time we were a relatively large change over a relatively large competitive entry that was going to take place. And actually, we as finance, as we were the only ones to have the total system overview, also provided what was called decision trees. Basically, we sat forward and said, like, okay, let's look, there's going to be significant moves going to happen. Now let's take one step. Let's put in a decision framework and let's play out all of the different potential moves, basically, that could be out there, and what would be our thought and our reaction, basically, for this. And let's do that before things happen, before the external changes and so on might be happen. Let's think that through. As a role, as natural finance role, which we were the only ones actually working on the whole organization, which is very often the case for finance, we were naturally the ones leading this and could place significant influence on the discussions, frame the discussions, and actually so that it was not always a single side discussion actually when it happened, but we could immediately go back, open up the drawer, saying like, look, these were the things that we played through, this is what we agreed at the time, and all of a sudden it was basically finance, myself, and others that were leading the discussion basically forward towards the various business ones. Why? Because we've mapped out the decision trees and the decision processes. And these are, especially if you see, now we live in very disruptive times, of course, at the moment, but especially if you see for your field, that there is things looming out there, taking up the lead and putting forward what I would call decision trees or decision frameworks based on certain scenarios and certain areas is something that naturally falls into the realm of finance and where significant guidance can be done on the system level. Moving forward then on the business side of things and business focus. And of course, as business partners, we want to drive and we want to be in the business shoes. Actually, when we did some interviews also with other folks, so that's true influence from finance leaders. So basically when the question was asked, like, what makes an influential finance person? Not just somebody just says, okay, you work there, but what makes an influential finance person? True influence from finance leader, able to somebody to see beyond cost. There are new ideas and insight on growth and how to drive the business forward. And I think that is one of the key things that we can actually provide as finance leaders, as influential finance leaders. And as a comparison, a bit of an analogy, what I want to share with is there's a fantastic thinking model in my view, which is called the growth mindset model, developed by Carol Dweck and others, which basically takes forward that there's two fundamental mindsets. One is a fixed mindset and one is a growth mindset. Fixed mindset sees oneself or an organization a little bit like height. It is what it is, that's there, nothing to be changed. With growth mindset, sees an organization and other things much more like a muscle. So if you work on it, it can grow, but you need to make focus on it. And you can already see that is very, very different and a very different kind of approaches. And if I do a thorough analogy, I would say sometimes cost leadership, something that finance is, depending again on your organization, that finance is quite known for, would be a bit similar towards a fixed mindset, whereas something I would call business leadership and thought leadership is something that is more on the growth mindset. And everybody who wants to have true business influence I would recommend to really invest time and invest thoughts on business leadership and thought leadership. Moving forward, what are 2 tools to do this? One very easy one that is very often forgotten is to provide what-if scenarios. So not only saying like, hey, that's the future, that's what we plan, but also saying like, okay, what if we invested further? What if we did nothing? And providing this and developing that data together with your teams, and again, maybe even in a power chart, basically providing that forward, especially during resource allocation and so on, can be enormously powerful. So what if scenarios? What if we did this? What if we acquired another business unit? This and this, what it would look like. And that can be done proactively because, again, we have the system overview. So providing what-if scenarios there. Another one could be, again, coming from, of course, I take it as a basis that one has good business insights done from maybe understanding, of course, the business line in depth, but also how we can truly add. And what is an edge towards other functions, again, is the total view, of course, of the business that we have. But maybe also a couple of what I would call aha insights, where really people understand what are the levers and where can they, how can they drive things forward. If we can understand and drive things and make clear to somebody that only 2 or 3 cost drivers basically actually make or break the forecast, or that there's only 2 or 3 or 4 business activities that we need to have. Or if we don't do anything, basically in 3 years' time, we'll lose half of the turnover. If people understand this and get this aha insight, very often you get this movement on of this culture change. And there, the focus is extremely important, that you provide these 1 or 2 of these aha insights. And they can come from all different kinds of things, like going back to the power charts that we have. Several aha insights that people remind and don't forget are things like, okay, there are more mobile phones than toothbrushes apparently in the world at the moment, and that people take away and they take something forward with it. Now, what we need to do and we need to find is to see what is the finance equivalent of this. What is the one cost driver that people can go out and focus on? And if we can identify these aha insights, these things like, hey, oh, I didn't know this. I didn't know that part of the profit actually comes only from that quarter, or these kind of things. If we can bring them forward, then we also achieve true influence. So this is for the business focus. Of course, we proactively bringing in, but not only, so to speak, not just making business recommendation, but really also connecting this to the total picture that is in general owned by the finance function as well. So we had communication focus, system focus, business focus, and now I would like to spend a couple of minutes on one thing which I've seen, especially in the last years, finance gained quite some influence, and that is on one field which is across the globe, and especially larger companies, but actually in almost all companies, is now concerning businesses, and that is innovation and the digital environment. And I think finance here can actually be at the forefront, and while being at the forefront, actually gain significant influence, not only in the way, basically, not only in how to operate with data and so on, but also in the way one operates. Let me give you an example there. I think here I've put you forward 2 areas on how digital transformation actually affects finance as well. And I separate this in technology and people. I don't want to dive into technology. Actually, in the council, we regularly discuss this. We continue to discuss this, and I do think we will also have very soon as well another webcast on this one as well. What are the technology developments there from forecasting, using AI's forecasting, cloud-based services, and so on. But also, especially the people side of things, there we can get significant influence. And I want to zoom in on one thing here. And all of the things are being tested by all kinds of finance organizations as well out there. But one strategy I've highlighted here, which is hackathons, which some of you might be aware of, some of you not. But I do believe that is one thing, how all of a sudden finance can become a key player and a key innovative player, because again, we're interacting so much with other functions. So what is a hackathon? Some of you might know a hackathon coming from the world of programming, the world of software development. And what is done in a hackathon I'll leave that slide on. You can, as always, you can download the whole pack and so on. But what is a hackathon? A hackathon is a time in software development where people get together for an hour, sometimes 24 hours, sometimes 12 hours in teams. And the idea is they create something together. So at the end of the hackathon, something new is being created. That is extremely important. There's something needs to be shipped. It's not a concept. It's not theory. It's something should be ready by then. And that in software design, it's very much in the agile world of software. It's a key concept. You see that all the world being conducted and employed. Now, I do think, and I've tested this in various environments in the field of finance as well, we can use this as well. And instead, many of you might organize with your teams, with the organizations, many of you might organize a team building event, basically, where you do something and you sit together and do an activity. Why not do next time as well what I would call a hackathon? Maybe on the ways you do reporting. And maybe you do this and you invite a couple of customers together. And what you do then is lock yourself away, basically, for the teams, divide in sub-teams, maybe with some of your other business partners, and develop maybe 10 new reports and throw out 10 old reports together and do that within 8, 9, 10 hours together. Work this in subgroups, basically. But this is not only a highly effective team building activity strategy, but it also is a very rapid one where people immediately see there's immediate action taking place. And actually finance, again, because of the interaction with the partners, because of the data focus, is uniquely qualified for that. So try as a tool, maybe for the next time, for the teams, organizations that you are responsible for, to take this away. And by doing this, you involve, you gain influence, because not only you're using, of course, you're as an innovator, you're on the forefront of tools and strategies that you use, but you're also involving the other side. And that can lead to very significant influence. As always, if you have any questions in the meantime, just throw them out and we can directly build them in. So we had comms focus, system focus, business focus, innovation focus. And communication already went to some of the fields of behavior. Now, I want to close with what I would call true behavior focus. And I want to give you 2 tools in there. And again, this time, I want to do a bit of another test for yourself. For this one, I need to ask you, I know you're on the internet, of course, and you're connected to the internet, but don't Google the answer. Make the thought for yourself as well, because I think it is a key thing for influence that we need to know. I will ask you now 2 questions, and 2 questions that come from, some of you might have been exposed to this one, from the field of behavioral finance. And from the research that was started and kicked off by Daniel Kahneman and others, who won the Nobel Prize for economics in 2002. So just want to ask you 2 quick questions, and just put the answer in your head. Again, maybe you've already come across this. Maybe you know the answer because it's a neighboring country. If not, just go ahead with this. I will ask you 2 questions, and you will see in a second why. The first question that I will ask you: is the total population of Bangladesh greater than 35 million? And again, you will see in a second why I'm asking that. Is it greater than 35 million? Yes or no? Don't Google it. Just think it for yourself. And now, question number 2, please give an estimate for yourself of the total population of Bangladesh. The total population of Bangladesh. And again, you could type a couple of them in the answers or for yourself as well. And what I will share with you is what the typical average answers is that one gets. On average, whenever I've asked this to hundreds and hundreds of audiences, and also if you look back at the original research, you get around an answer on average like 80, 85 million, at least here in Europe, basically, when you ask where it's a bit of a distant country. Whereas the true answer, for those of you that have Googled it or who know it or who know these kind of things by heart, is it's around about 156 million, 156. But very rarely, basically, people really get it. And why? Because of the first question. The total population 35 or not. What set this one here was an anchor. This is an anchor. And that anchor of 35 basically makes it that whatever comes afterwards, I put in relation to. And you know this from your finance work as well, but we need to know it, and we can use it for our thinking in influence as well. So 156 is the right answer. Very often it's away from this one. What can we use this for? What is the tool? This one is a one called anchoring, and you will see that time and again. But you will need to, in order to put true influence in, you need to put in this anchoring, and you need to start to play it to your effect. Because all of you might have known, like when you started out, or again, you might have seen that somewhere. You know the scenario, right? I mean, somebody asks you, hey, we have this new initiative, it's a 10 million investment, like, can you let us know what the MPV is, or something like this, or what will be the return? And do a back of the envelope calculation, and you go back and you did that maybe mistake or not mistake, and you say, oh, it's around about, I don't know, MPV, it's 15 million MPV. And immediately then, and you might know this scenario, for the next month or years afterwards, whatever update your team or yourself will provide when the people were in the same room, they will always ask you like, oh, what, it's 10 million now? But didn't you say 50 million? Well, yeah, that was back on the envelope and so on. But it set the anchor. It set the anchor at the beginning. So how should we know this? How should we leverage this effect for this effect of anchoring? First of all, we need to be aware, because otherwise the influence, we come very fast into the defense. So providing these off-the-cuff quick things, difficult, much more powerful, providing ranges and framing a discussion as well very often. So the key thing, in general, whenever we propose scenario, whenever we propose data, but also decision ones, one of the key things that I recommend, always putting in 3 options, 3 scenarios, 3 areas in general. Why 3? 3 is a crowd, is still overseeable, and it puts away already this away from yes or no, should we invest or not, and something, it puts it away. What's the 0 option if we did nothing, or putting at least 3, if not more, scenarios together. That avoids, that is the one key thing, simple strategy, very often not being done, simple strategy to frame the question correctly and to anchor it correctly. So whenever it is for decision making, putting that forward as well. Not saying it depends, but basically 1, 2, 3. And they are much different discussions, and much higher quality of decisions can take place. Going to the last tool, and now we come to really core behavior as well. And there I want to leave you with and actually explore that a bit. And that's a model on influence style. And there I think especially finance can learn a lot. Again, that really depends on your background, on yourself, on your personality. But there are different styles, and I think the key thing for influencing is adapting towards the style of the other side. There's a key theory in influence communication which is called pacing and leading. First, in order for somebody to connect, to move along, basically, it's first we have to pace, and then we can lead. If we go directly and bam, you have to do this, sometimes if we have power and so on, that can go through, but it's not truly influencing. So that's why I want to share with you 4.5 styles. And you can think for yourself as well, what is the style that comes easiest to you, and then see maybe there are some differences and discussions as well with other sides of style. So what is the first one? That is one that is very natural towards the finance function. That's rationalizing. We should do this because the data shows this and this and this, and that's why this is a good investment. We should do this and this and this, that's why we should buy this, that's why we should sell this business unit. Rationalizing is one of the key things of the finance function. Next style is asserting. This needs to be done. Very often in crisis, good crisis leaders, good finance crisis leaders go, okay, bam, we need to cut this and this and this. We need to asserting here, and already there, that is very powerful, of course, especially if we have the formal authority, or also if we can shine through also the softer side of things to get, okay, this needs to be done, that needs to be done, can be very powerful. Unless it's not very clear. So in a crisis, that works extremely well. In terms of growth, that is already a bit different. When it comes like, okay, when nobody knows the right answer, basically. As Joseph Campbell once said, if the path before you is clear, you're probably on somebody else's path. And a lot of industry and a lot of companies are experiencing this at the moment. What is the right path? If we want to influence as finance there, asserting ourselves might not be the only thing. And that's why there are also other styles. And in this model, again, I put the link down there. I can highly recommend you read further and follow up on this one. There's also the negotiating style. Negotiating style is not only saying that you need to do that, but okay, let's try to see. It's the classical give and take, basically. And the last one is what is called the inspiration style. And there you can see already the combination, and I think finance can do a lot more in that field as well. Can play a lot more in that thought leadership, like, okay, imagine if this and this happened. What could be the business models of the future, especially with digital transformation? Okay, imagine if, let's calculate it through. And that could be extremely inspiring also for others, when all of a sudden, not only come like, okay, we need to do this because we need to change, but actually from finance comes like, hey, these are the various business models, and if we had to implement it, imagine if we could get there. Then we could get towards true influence as well. The key recommendation in influence research is not to say, hey, there's just one style that always works. No, what I mentioned before is pace and lead. Think for yourself what feels natural to you. A lot of finance folks that I work with say, well, of course, rationalizing, because that's what we do. But maybe it's also asserting that comes natural to you. But maybe you want to switch as well. Maybe sometimes you want to switch gears as well and say, hey, maybe in an uncertain way, in an uncertain future, in a growth scenario, I want to go more into inspiration style. I promised you 4.5 styles. And the last one that the authors here put together is what is called bridging. Bridging meaning not truly a style, not truly a way of communication, but really like trying to say, hey, can I build a bridge towards the other person? And one of the key things, and if you want to read further on this one, I provided the link here, but also one of the books that I truly recommend to use by Robert Giuliani on influence, the power of influence, a professor of psychology who's written that a book on the power of influence and the various drivers of persuasion and influence. And one of the key things, one of the key strategies there for influence is also reciprocity. So if we do something for others, basically, also that comes back. And I think also that as a finance function, that truly can help. Like, how can we provide service? How can we build multifunctional teams? How can we provide really finance analysis towards others? And that was one of the, for me personally, one of the biggest areas of influence when I truly, together with my leadership team, truly start building multifunction areas and see like, hey, we can take over. Of course, you have a shortage at the moment. Hey, we can cover this and so on. And then true build up also started to play out. Not in every scenario, not in every situation, but I think the key thing that we need to do as finance is to develop that style flexibility here. And that is one of the last things that I want to leave you with. So we went through a couple of tools. We went through communication first. Key thing there, and again, you mentioned also at the beginning, behavior is one of the key things to get influence. And I would dare to say, yes, but in combination with all the other areas that we have. But for sure, what did we go through in communication? We went through, and maybe if you have any questions and so on in it, you can think about while I'm summarizing that here. But in communications, we went through first the commander's intent, summarizing everything very clear. Having a power chart in place, having a data story in place. These are things in your organizations or for yourself up onto the highest level, how we can truly influence. System focus, thinking about this opt-in, opt-out, putting up forward the decision frame, framing the decision like this, if this, then that, type of decision trees and so on that are predefined. And by then, things fall into place. So working on the system, not in the system. And finance is uniquely qualified for that. Business focus. So truly adding not only, okay, we need to cut costs basically, or that costs too much, but truly building like, hey, okay, what if we did this? What if we build it here? Okay, there's a couple of scenarios and I see that long-term investment here. Innovation focus, truly they're needed for all companies today, and finance can play a leading role so that people look at, hey, what you guys are doing here, maybe we can do that as well in our environment. So there with the idea of a hackathon, for example. And the last one, behavior focus, basically here with the style diversity, and also taking into place things like framing and anchoring, where clearly we can influence the quality of decision by really not putting just one anchor out there and then playing catch up, but actually by providing ranges, estimates, and at least like 3 options all of the time. For yourself, and maybe for a rainy weekend and so on, you see 5 areas there. And what you can do is maybe think for yourself as well on these 5, give yourself a score. How do you personally do? Communication, is everything top notch? Do you always get top feedback? Or maybe there's some work. Behavior, also style flexibility, maybe there's some work. Innovation, maybe there's something. And then start implementing in your organization, in your field, step by step. And I think if we do that on our move towards business partnership, on our move towards influence, we gain really also true influence. I hope you got a couple of tools, couple of strategies out there for influence. Again, that is not the end. It's probably the beginning of a discussion. If you have anything, send me an email, send me a note. There will be also future webcasts coming. You can also send this here to another folk. You can always contact me or Derek or Margaret and so on with some questions, and we can continue the discussion. And of course, we also, as the council, as the Business Unit CFO Council, which I'm the Council Director of, we will also continue to build thoughts and ideas and to discuss that. And maybe I see some of you there or in another council on a continent as well in there. So with that, I wish you all the best in your influencing journey of finance, but also a great rest of the day wherever you may be at the moment. Thank you very much.